if there's one thing that's been made very clear to me with the recent praise of movies like Megan and now Sick, it's that horror standards might be at an all-time low. In a world where we have so many different subgenres, everything from slasher to elevated horror, it seems like people more often than not are satisfied with the bare minimum. Let's discuss.
I watch so you don't have to.
Before I get started, I'd like to kindly ask that you hit the like button, and please subscribe to the channel for more content just like this.
What are you waiting for, huh? What are you waiting for?
So I heard about this movie Sick, currently streaming on Peacock. And when I actually looked into it, there were some things about it that intrigued me on a surface level. Most notably that it was written by the great Kevin Williamson, of course of Scream fame.
I'm feeling woozy here!
Although if you look a little deeper, you will see that he merely co-wrote it. And if I had to guess, I'd say the final film is more the product of the other writer than it is Kevin. But based on the reactions that this movie is getting, you would think that Sick was the second coming of Scream. I've seen people call Sick one of the absolute best slashers in years. Now, I don't know exactly what these people's criteria is or what that opinion is based on, but going in, hearing all this, I was expecting something about this movie to wow me, to set it apart from the countless other slashers we've gotten over the years. Well, after watching it, I'm here to tell you that it did absolutely none of that for me.
Not impressed.
Sick follows a young woman named Parker, who while quarantining at her family's lake house during the pandemic with her best friend, they are threatened by an unexpected visitor. Sick is a great example of a movie thinking that it's more clever than it actually is. I'm sure this concept sounded great to someone on paper, but when you actually turn it into a movie and you watch it play out as a viewer, it came off to me as being more annoying than it did entertaining. Setting this movie during the pandemic doesn't necessarily make it relevant or intelligent. In fact, I'd say, if anything, using the pandemic as a backdrop for this movie was probably a mistake.
Big mistake.
Especially if you're trying to appeal to someone like me, who uses movies to escape all this bullshit that they hear about constantly in their everyday life. And I can hear people saying it already, I'm taking things too seriously. No, I'm not. What I'm pointing out is that by filling out the first portion of your movie with cringe-inducing dialogue about masks or social distancing is not entertaining to me in the slightest, whether it's delivered in a lighthearted, joking manner or not.
Ha ha, very funny, motherfucker!
Now, throughout the middle section of the movie, a lot of that takes a back seat. And when things finally get going, we finally start to get into the more traditional horror aspects of the movie. So at this point, I was thinking to myself, well, the pandemic setting isn't really working for me personally, but maybe the horror stuff is what people are so hype about. And I gotta be honest, the horror stuff was fine, but it's absolutely nothing you've never seen before.
Whoopie fucking do. Hey, I'm impressed.
The killer isn't all that memorable, either in design or as a character. The kills themselves were decent, but nothing really stood out to me, and we get a lot of typical shit otherwise. Predictable jump scares, predictable twists, the killer taunting his victims on the phone, not killing people when they have the chance. We've seen all this shit before. There was one sequence that I thought was halfway decent at first, where the killer is trying to get to Parker, and she's on one of those square floating docks kind of paddling away from him. But apparently my guy is either an Olympic swimmer or a master diver, or maybe both.
I can't swim.
Because I swear to God, he holds his breath for what seems like an eternity, just so he can play poke through the dock with his knife. Something else that, again, we've seen a million times before. Now, is that criticism nitpicky? Maybe. But when that's probably the most memorable thing in your movie, it doesn't say much for the rest of it, now does it?
This is whack! I can't get jiggy with this shit!
They do have these somewhat frantic chase scenes where the camera's kind of bouncing all around like it's the Blair Witch Project or some shit. I guess that was kind of cool because it makes you feel like you're in the shit with the characters. But overall, I just was not impressed with any of the horror elements contained within this story. The characters are fine, I guess. The final girl, played by Gideon Adlon, was likable enough. I don't know if she's actually believable as a badass, given what we know about her, but at the very least, I guess she did bring one thing to this movie that's worth talking about.
Because she got a great ass!
As for the finale, or the twist of this movie, this is where the cringe comes roaring back. Now, I won't spoil the ending for anyone, but I will say this. When everything is eventually revealed, I wasn't surprised. And again, it was nowhere near as clever as they thought it was. I'll give them props for at least trying to do something different with the motive, but in the end, again, it just fell flat for me because it all seemed very shallow.
This ain't exactly the Mississippi.
In fact, it felt very similar to the BS motive in Scream 5, if I'm being honest. It was literally like they filmed a bunch of whack jobs I see on the news every day, and then charged me to watch it. This idea could have worked, truth be told, but only if they took a more subtle approach, a more intelligent approach. The idea may have been there, but like usual, the execution was not.
Put some effort into it!
Maybe they needed someone like Wes Craven to properly convey the satire and social commentary they were going for. Just a creative mind to kind of steer the ship in the right direction. It might have done this movie some good, actually. Sick isn't the worst thing I've seen by any means, but it was kind of underwhelming and forgettable and felt more like a TV movie more than anything. So that's why I'm going to give Sick the Angry Rocky.
The dreaded stinks! Y'all be cool. Right on.